Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host, my partner, Mr. Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian. And today's conversation is covering a topic that actually is much more prevalent than a lot of us know. And there are some very well-known folks that have succeeded at the highest level, even with dyslexia. So folks like Steven Spielberg and Richard Branson and so many others. And so we're going to have a conversation about that and how our guests took that diagnosis and actually built something, created something to benefit this community and educate folks. So hang on for another episode of Just Two Dads. If Brian can get his stuff together, I promise you we're going to see. It's not just you guys. Here we go. Just Two Dads. It's live, folks. It's live. So, you know, we deal with it. And we don't edit because for those of us in the special needs community, you know, life comes at us as it comes at us. We don't have the benefit of producing lighting, you know, and actually, you know, cleaning up the dirtiness of life. It comes at us. And so we committed 4 years ago, Sean and I, to do this podcast. And just go at it, you know, as life comes at us. So, which is great. As we were talking just before we went live with our guests, Lynn and John, and Lynn was saying that, you know, we may hear echoes, we may hear people in the background. My fire alarm may go off. Like, who knows? So just bear with us. Thank everybody for catching us live on Facebook. If you're catching us after the fact on our website at justtwodadspodcast.com or on our YouTube channel. Welcome. Hit the like and subscribe button on the videos. There may be some information there that's going to be valuable for other folks in the community or people that you know, and it'll help us, you know, obviously broaden our reach. If you're catching us on podcast outlets or WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thanks for making us part of your listening day. As always, we are grateful to be able to have this platform to talk with amazing folks who are doing things for others in the special needs community. Most importantly, it helps us as we go through what we do as parents. It helps make the world a much smaller place. So that being said, other things, thanks, John, for putting that up on the screen, justtwodadspodcast.com. And I want to thank Billy Footwear, as always, being a sponsor, and Shauna Hall out in Hawaii, who helps us get this thing off the ground. And so there are so many more people to thank. We'll wait till the end of the show to thank them. But again, thank you all for tuning in. If you've got questions or comments, put them in the chat and let us know what you think. So without further ado, that was a lot of talking. Without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Sean Francis, and he'll introduce our guests, and then we'll get in this conversation. Sean, how you feeling, buddy?
Good. No, I got an idea for a new show. We'll call it That Was a Lot of Talking, because that just suits us. But anyway, I'm doing great. Thankful and blessed. And I think, you know, the way I spent my day yesterday has a lot to do with I think there's a correlation between that and our guest. My son Elijah, my mom, my brother, and my niece, we spent the day in Santa Barbara yesterday, and we took the train, and it was a bit of a milestone in that, you know, it's the first time Elijah's taken the train. It's the first time he's worn something on an outing other than his black suit, which gives the impression that he's employed by the Men in Black. And so it was a nice, you know, these nice little victories along the way. Some new foods he tried, all that kind of stuff. Wow. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in what we're doing that we might forget the being part. And our guests today have, in my opinion anyway, struck a good balance between the doing and the being. If you're just doing, you have these milestones, but when you're being, you catch the milestone and you celebrate it along the way. And this is a mother-son team, if you will, who has written a book, taken the challenge of dyslexia and turned it into a victory and an inspiration for all. So welcome to Just Two Dads, Lynn and John Greenberg, excuse me. See, I'm making names up.
Yes, exactly.
That's all good. Thank you for having us. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. The pleasure is ours. We usually start the show talking, about, and obviously, Lynn, you would go first because we talk about, if you're just doing what you do, you don't see yourself as a hero. One of the required credentials for being a hero is more than likely not thinking that you are one. So, why don't you start with a bit, Lynn, about how and where you were raised figuratively and literally, because that has everything to do with how you then face parenthood, diagnosis, and all those things that come into play, and it dictates what you pass on to your child when they face a diagnosis, and the ability to see the diagnosis as an opportunity versus a challenge, and the difference or the line between being a warrior and worrier. So why don't we start with that?
Well, I grew up in a very conventional, family. My parents, I have one brother, um, loving family, big extended family. Um, I have three older children. And when John was born, all children learn differently, as you know, but in this case, John wasn't hitting some of the milestones that I was sort of surprised he wasn't hitting. He was the kid who, could tell me every Thomas the Tank Engine their name, but not that Thomas started with the letter T. And he did not want to
Mm.
sing the ABC song. Sesame Street was super popular, as it, to some it is now, but they had an ABC song. He refused to sing it. And, he just wasn't learning some of the things that I was surprised he wasn't learn was what should have been learning, I think. And his nursery school teacher's like, oh, he's slow, he's a boy, and he's giving me all the baloney. And I thought, I don't think that's it. I really don't think that's it. And slowly, I kept seeing that those milestones were not being hit.
Well,
And John,
and you had three older children, so obviously you knew what
At
to
a
do.
reference point. Yeah.
yes,
Right, yeah,
I
yeah,
definitely had a reference point. And like I said, all kids we know everyone learns
sure,
differently.
yeah.
But he just wasn't doing some of the basic milestones that I thought that he should be getting. I knew he was smart because of the things he could remember, but he wasn't remembering some of the basic things that I was just surprised that he couldn't. And then honestly, he started acting out a little, which was kind of crazy because he just wasn't that kid. And I thought, there's something going on here. He's frustrated, he's unhappy. So back then, no Google, no internet, nothing. I could look online and start asking. So I started researching. I have a really good friend who's a pediatrician. I started to talk to her and ask her questions. And I started doing my research that way because I didn't have some of the same platforms that are available today. And I finally spoke to his pediatrician, his own pediatrician, and I said, this is, and he knew me from my three older kids, so we had a long relationship.
Sure.
And I said, something's up. And he said, tell me what you're thinking about, what you're worried about. And I did. And he said, well, let's get him tested. And I said,
How old was he at the time that you did this?
6. He was 6.
Okay.
And I had been told at his elementary school that he was too young. And I said that to the doctor, and he said, no way. I know someone, she'll be great. And we signed John up and tested classic dyslexic, ADHD as well, super smart, but he just was going to need to learn differently. And then that started a different odyssey. How was I going to educate John? So,
Yeah, interesting. John, how old are you now?
I'm 25.
25. Okay, so yeah, this has been a little. I had a business partner who was diagnosed as a sophomore at UC Berkeley. She lived with it
wow.
her whole life and had no idea why it just took her longer to do things than her peers. But she was also fierce, and she was like, she found ways to figure out how to overcome without a lot of support. So amazing, and amazing to have an advocate, in your corner, like
Yeah.
Lynn.
And you can't stop asking questions. I've one of the things I'm most grateful for the show is that it's made me stop and think about the way I process things and the way I've learned, because academia and I have never been friends, which surprises people that don't necessarily, know me well. And I started to hone in on the notion of my attention span, because I can tend to be all over the place, and I don't have anything official yet, but I took like a basic examination online, and there's a high propensity for ADHD. And so I'm looking into that further. So for anybody that's listening that just feels different, or has a loved one that just seems to receive things differently, we can't tire of the questions. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I agree. I think people are too willing to either be an ostrich and pretend something's not going on, or to listen to, the experts. I think it's easier sometimes to ignore what's in front of you instead of exploring. And in the end, it isn't easier, because if you don't do the exploration, in my, humble opinion, you end up with bigger problems later. If you ignore
Yeah.
what's in front of you and don't address it,
Yeah.
I think it's a problem for you and for whomever you're concerned, for.
For sure.
Yeah. And it is easier up front, but like you said,
Yes.
sorry, Brian, there is a bigger price to pay down the line. And then how we're raised does have everything to do with that. That's where we talk about culture and all these different types of things, because sometimes you're raised to suppress it. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Brian?
No, I was just going to say, so once you got the diagnosis, then what steps did you then take to get John the support, and eventually it led to, what we're going to talk about, but this is all good background information just to understand.
And then what year was this too, for context?
Well, he was diagnosed 6 years old.
Yeah, he was 6 years old, and he was going into, he's finishing kindergarten and going into first grade. And by the time we had the diagnosis, so I'll backtrack, but I didn't think I was having trouble getting any assistance at his school. And it was honestly, at some point, even the learning specialist said to me, I don't really know much about dyslexia. I can't help John. You're going to have to go somewhere else for remediation. So
That's
I
an honest
spoke.
answer.
Yeah, I was surprised. She kind of told me on the QT because she didn't want to get in trouble. But yeah, it was very honest. And I went back to the woman who tested him, and she actually had two neurodivergent children, one who was dyslexic, one who was severely autistic. And so she so very much understood what I was going through and made some suggestions. And one of them was to look at the school that John ended up going to, but it was called the Windward School. And originally it was just in Westchester, New York, and now there's a campus in Manhattan. And they only teach kids who have dyslexia or a language-based learning issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we applied, with fingers crossed, and he was accepted. But, private school is an issue also,
Sure.
How are
Sure.
we going to do that? I had to drive him. I had older children. We were going to have to eat a lot of peanut butter and jelly to do this. And,
Sure.
we made a family decision that we thought it was really important. And my older kids were on board, and obviously my husband, John's dad, so we all pitched in, and John went to the school, and it was a game changer. It was life changing for him and for the kids who were there.
Beautiful. And John, we were talking as if like you're not here, but
Hey, I didn't feel like chopped liver or anything. Don't worry.
okay, good. Okay, good. And just I'm fascinated. I love, obviously, as a parent, we all share certain things as parents, how we deal with the diagnosis and the steps that we take, and what our goals are and what our hopes and dreams are for our child. And so I love the fact that you're on this episode with us, because from your perspective, and again, not that you necessarily were aware at 6 years old of how that felt, but going into that new school and dealing with that, how was that for you? Was that something that you felt like you had some answers, or life was made easier? How was that? How was that for you?
Well, when I first went in and realized that all of the other students were there with the same problem as me, I realized something that I'd had sort of deep-seated inside me for all the time prior. I had sort of thought I was less than. I thought I was stupid. I started believing what those teachers told me. But then when I walked into a building and saw, oh, wait, I'm not the only one with the problem, it really was a positive.
Sure.
Just everything went up from there. And well, at first, when I first found out that I was dyslexic, I was able to say, okay, so it's not something I can control. That was the sort of where the door opened, and I realized, oh, it isn't something I can control, but it is something I can harness. And so from there on, it was all for the best.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think that is such a powerful distinction, right? I'm not alone. By the way, as
The
parents,
power of inclusion. Yeah.
right? As parents, we feel that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not in this on my own, but as somebody going through it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, it's not me. It's like this is more common than we think. And in fact, I was just reading what some of the stats: 5 to 10% of the population globally deals with dyslexia, and so and oftentimes misdiagnosed or not diagnosed until way late, and then
Yes.
all the stuff that comes with that is it's a challenge. So good for you. So I love this. And Lynn, you had said that there was obviously out of frustration. We all know that the terrible twos, a lot of it is when children would start to communicate, and the terrible twos are a time of frustration because the kids know that they can communicate, they just don't know how to communicate, and so they have tantrums, they get frustrated. So you were saying that John was going through this, where he was starting to act out and things. Once you guys had this diagnosis, did that change? Do you see a significant change in that?
100%. I think obviously, kids are kids. They're not going to always behave perfectly.
Right.
But, it really happened when he was frustrated. And so, as teachers, they have too many kids in their classes. They cannot pay attention to one kid who's acting out. And so instead of trying to understand why John was acting out, they were just like, oh, he's acting out, he's a pain in my neck. And I thought, well, the verbal cues were speaking to me because he's not a difficult kid by any stretch, and he never was. And so I knew something was going on that was making him feel badly. And honestly, it ended up being, quite frankly, mostly his teachers. You're not that smart kid, or why aren't you trying harder, or those kinds of negative conversations. And that's when John was acting out. So
Sure.
I think it's really important for parents to not only get, maybe the academic clues, but the nonverbal clues. Those are so important.
Amazing. And Lynn, you're an attorney by trade, if you will, right?
Yes, I am.
And
Very retired, or as some say, reformed. But yeah.
And you froze there for a second, Brian. You did say, Lynn is an attorney by trade.
She's an attorney. Yeah.
Okay, right.
It's happening with our internet today. But it's live.
It's life. It's
life. What happens?
Every day is
life.
Monday lately.
Yeah, for sure. So the two of you decided to take this information, this diagnosis, and look at there being a problem out there as far as relatedness. And so explain to folks, what you decided to do, how you came to the decision to do what you did and what you've created, and talk a little bit about your book, because I love the story. So tell us that story.
Well, I can say that there are multiple places sort of that are all interconnected regarding how the story came into being. First off, it started during the lockdown when we all found each other sort of stuck back home. My art programs were mostly making me just, at a certain point, they started asking for essays, which I can't really fault the teacher. It's sort of hard to do a painting class together when we're all separated by a door and a couple 100 miles at least. But I wasn't really getting anything out of my time being at home. So we'd always sort of had the idea to create a book, but not really taking it too seriously. But this time we're like, you know what, let's actually do it. And that was because we came up with the idea for the main character, Robbie the dyslexic taxi. And the reason for that was because I always had trouble with lefts and rights, and I couldn't read signs for obvious reasons in that case. But it wasn't until I was given a creative solution by my mom of holding up both hands, and one makes an L and the other makes an R with the, if you stick your thumbs out like this, and I know it'll be reversed here, but the basic gist is there. And then the idea was, how would a taxi cab that couldn't read signs or know it's left to right, how would it get around and do its job? And so we then from there just built it up.
Beautiful. And I want to obviously we put the title Robbie the Dyslexic Taxi up on the screen for folks who are listening and not seeing it. And yet there's a picture of it right there there you go. And awesome. And you also created I know that Robbie the Taxi comes from the Creative Cab company, right?
Yes.
And so you've created a website as well. We're putting that up on the screen too.
Thank you.
creativecabcompany.com, where you can go and read more about the story and about Lynn and about John and about Robbie. So yeah. So no, I think it's listen, part of what we're doing is again, creating an opportunity to reach out to a broader audience. Like, there are things that are available. There it is up on the screen as well. For folks to, if you have a child and they are struggling, like, it's a beautiful story. It's won awards. So tell us how it came up. So I get how you came about. Obviously you were struggling yourselves. And so the story and the artwork and all of that, because you touched on it just briefly, John, but you are in an art, you're at a university in an art program. So
yes, I'm currently trying to get an MFA in painting and drawing. And so, as I briefly mentioned, I was in art class at the time of the outbreak. Yeah. And that was one of the reasons, was because I wanted to actually do more art, but I wasn't really giving an outlet. So we decided, why not a children's book? And my mom can attest to this, but we also did it because I have a niece and a nephew then. Now I have 2 nephews and a niece, and she would always read children's books to them over Zoom. So the thought process of, well, why don't we make our own? That was one of the other reasons we decided to just go from there.
Love that. I love that. That's right. And so you did all the artwork, John, for the book?
Yes, I did. It was time consuming, but very much worth it.
Oh, sure. Of course. That's awesome. That's beautiful. And then who actually wrote this story? Obviously the 2 of you together, or how did you come about that?
Well, originally we had started the process thinking I would write the book and John would do the illustrations. And then as we started talking about it, John absolutely, for all the right reasons, had a definite point of view. So we collaborated and we co-authored, and he did all the illustrations, because trust me, you do not want my stick figures in the book. I have 0 art talent. So that's what happened. We collaborated in part. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. I shared a lot of those kinds of things, collaborated with my mom on a lot of things growing up. So she took a couple of college classes with me so she could get the experience of being in a college class with me. So
yeah,
I understand that. So that is beautiful. And are you planning on doing more? Is there obviously, is it a series, or tell us about where it's going? What are you doing with all of this?
So we've had such a wonderful response to this book that we decided that we would now just we were going to do a series, and it's going to be under the Creative Cab Company, logo. And we decided that we are going to do other neurodivergent characters. So, that's some of John's artwork as well as the book, but other artwork. But
fantastic.
So yeah, the next character that we're working on, we're right in the middle of it, and John's doing the illustrations, is about another car, but this one has ADHD. And Robbie will be in the book, and all the friends from the Creative Cab Company will be there. But we want kids, we want people to see in the neurodivergent community that there's a place for them, and they should be in books, and they,
For sure.
kids should see themselves. And we actually have done some readings in schools, and we went back to the school that John went to, and we, reading the book, everyone treated him like a rock star and wanted his, can we have your
Beautiful.
autograph?
Oh
And
my gosh,
it was
beautiful.
so great. Yeah. And they asked, one of the questions was, are you going to do another book? And we said, yes,
Sure.
ADHD. And they're like, yay, because I would say at least half of the kids there, had the comorbidities of dyslexia and ADHD.
Right.
So
Sure. I think more than half on this podcast have ADHD as well. So
yeah,
we get it.
probably.
And I laugh about it because you guys are on the East Coast. We're in Los Angeles, this Los Angeles area. So a car with ADHD, we see that every day. So that's something we can kind of
That's
relate
true.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
Now this I have a question that's probably going to bring out the petty in me, and people are probably either going to get it or they're going to think less of me. But I'm going to ask it, which is true. Those teachers that naysayers can either and negativity can be the fertilizer for your dreams and things like that. Any communication with the teachers that not the one that gave an honest and helpful answer, hey, I don't have any experience, but those that contributed to John's challenges. Any idea if they're aware of the book? Any desire to let them know just that they might want to check out the book? Anything like that?
Yeah, funny you should ask. So
Good.
I haven't seen some of them, but there's one woman I constantly bump into, and it takes every bit of self-control for me not to go, look at this, you were wrong. And
Oh gosh.
I don't know if she recognizes me or not, but it really takes a lot of self-control on my part to say, to not say what I really, the cartoon bubble over my head. It's a good thing she can't
Yes.
read it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, put it this way. This is something for you. I think, I think is worthwhile because what you want to convey and what you want to say don't necessarily have to be the same thing. And I don't know if she's still teaching, but I always like to. Brian knows, anybody that watches the show knows that I will very often try to live by the words and state, the words of Muhammad Ali, which is that service to others is the rent we pay for our room on earth. Service can be provided to her by maybe just honestly, not in a petty way, honestly saying, something, I don't know if you're aware, here's what we've done. And, and I'm not saying this to pick, but once upon a time, such and such a thing took place. Look at what we did with that. Do you know? There might be parents out there or children who might not see that as fertilizer. If you're still teaching, might be something to just, think about. And regardless of the outcome, there's something to get out of that without rubbing somebody's nose in it. Because if you really think about it, the person's receptive, that's got to be worthwhile. And I'm weird enough where I would do something like that.
I have thought about it, but I'm not always like I will see her in the local market or so I've thought about it, but I have a tendency to do things like that, and it makes it sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't.
Or it can backfire. You have to decide. You have to decide beforehand that regardless of the outcome, it's worth doing. And if you can't get to that point, then it's not worth pursuing. But if you get to that point, you say it and you completely let it go because you can't control what's done with it.
True. The litigator in me wants to go after her. But,
although,
yes,
the counterpoint to that is, you got very focused and you were like,
yes,
I'm not going to take no. I feel the same way about the neurologist in my daughter, her diagnosis. I was like, she gave us the list of all the things that she wouldn't do. And I celebrate daily all the things that my daughter can do that are exactly counter to it. But honestly, we were so rocked at the time that the fact that she told us what she told us, it actually motivated us to we're not going to take that as like you had said, we're not going to stick our head in the sand and just go, oh, well, I guess that's our, that's it. We're done. That's, this is our sentencing. We were like, no, we're going to show her. So in some cases, some doctors would say, hey, I told you the worst. It's always on a scale. The fact that you took that and did something with it is on you, and congratulations and kudos to you. And some don't change what they're going to do. The reality, it is kudos to you for doing what you've done.
Thank you.
It is, and if any doctor ever hears us, whether they're listening live or after the fact, you just pointed something out, which is great. Like, look, I have this scale that I have to operate on based on my information. Here's what I would tell you I expect to take place. At the end of the day, as a parent, you can do something about that, regardless of the outcome, blah, blah, blah. There's something to be said. 2 points I was going to make. I was thinking of Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. I forget where he's from. I think he's from it doesn't matter. Wherever he's from, he had a teacher that said to him, based on, and I think it might have been based on the fact that he's Black and or where he comes from, I'll see you in whatever the county jail is, that's where you're going to end up. The fact that he made it to the NBA and is the MVP of the NBA Finals is but a footnote compared to his acumen and intelligence as an individual. That's some poisonous work that people, do during the pandemic. My wife had a board with Elijah's schedule and everything, and I posted it because I thought it was something good that teachers or parents could get something out of that. And one parent said something like, "Oh my gosh, you have him up at such and such. I could never do that." I responded by saying, "Hey, I have the wherewithal to read that and not be bothered by it." Another parent might not be, and they might not be willing to share something that they've discovered. Think twice before you deliver a message like that. And that goes to every last one of us. I have to remain cognizant of that myself too. We can't ever tire of those efforts.
Yep. Agreed.
For sure. So I'm excited to hear. So you're getting an MFA.
Yes.
So let's just go, if we can, we'll just go back a little bit in time here. So you obviously had some help at 6 years old. You got through through elementary school and middle school and high school. And tell us about your experience in education all the way up through and getting into college and now getting into your MFA program. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
So when it started out, I definitely hated school, which I don't think is too uncommon a thing for children in general. But when I was in elementary, it was just a lot of frustration and confusion. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't really able to figure it out. And as my mom mentioned, it wasn't really till I got to Windward and how I mentioned I was like, oh, I'm not alone. There, they have a very special method, the Morton Gillingham.
Orton Gillingham, yeah.
Morton Gillingham method. And it's a specific way of teaching specifically dyslexic children. And I couldn't tell you the whole part 1 to part 10 of how it's different than other styles of teaching. But the main points are smaller classes, more teachers and teaching assistants, and more one-on-one time. And so the whole process was exactly what I needed. And from there, I actually left Windward. It goes till high school, but I actually left before I got into high school, went to another high school completely separate from Windward. And with all the tools I received from the program of Windward, I was able to go through it just like any other kid.
Beautiful.
And so once college started, I was prepared in more than one way to just do my best and not get in when I got knocked down, because it did happen even with all the help. Just learning to get back up is one of perhaps my strongest powers from having had dyslexia.
Love that. I love that. That's awesome. And then why did you choose the MFA path? What was that decision?
Well, you could go into describing that I like to share my emotions with other people. One of the first things I was able to do as a kid was look at picture books because I couldn't read the words, but I was able to sort of get a gist of what the story was from the images. And so that, oh, I see it was also posted down below, so I appreciate that. But while I was looking through these images, I was able to create a story that could be correct, or it could be completely incorrect, but I was still happy with it. And that urge of sharing emotions with other people was just something I kind of connected with. And then I was able to read and write, and creating worlds out of nothing and having people look at it and take their own perspectives and put it on. It's just something I've always loved and really wanted to be connected with. So that's the main reason why I decided to go into
true
art.
artist right there. That's
Right.
beautiful.
And then, if for clarification for viewers, let everybody know what an MFA program is.
MFA. Oh, sorry.
No, you do answer, John. It's all you.
Masters of Fine Arts. It's
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting. It's the equivalent of getting a PhD for artists, but I don't get doctor at the beginning of it, and there's much fewer years than some other
Right.
ones.
Right.
Yeah, it's great. Because again, it leads to so much on the creative side of things. I love that. As I mentioned, my one of my business partners who was diagnosed as a college student. She's an artist. I mean, that's her expression. It's just easier for her to translate her or communicate, I just say in general, through art. I mean, that's beautiful, brilliant.
I think, all the kids and all the people that we know who are dyslexic or have some other neurodivergent issue, but we know more about the dyslexic community. And I think every single one of them, we like to say, has a superpower. They have some really interesting way of expressing themselves, and their minds work in such a creative way. They're not limited to necessarily what comes on the written page, because some of them never overcome it, but they express themselves in so many wonderful and creative ways. There, as you said, Richard Branson. There are so many authors, they're actors, Henry Winkler. They're just, people express themselves and surround themselves with such interesting people, and they build their own communities of support and friendship to either help them navigate their dyslexia or to express it in different ways. So,
I mean, Pablo Picasso, you have on that list, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Steven Spielberg, one of our greatest filmmakers.
Exactly.
It is. I get it. It makes a lot of sense, and we agree with you. Sean and I would say, we talk about this on a regular basis. That anybody who has some sort of challenge actually has a superhero. Because a lot of times we will actually, we overcome or overcompensate for where there's a lacking in some particular area. Folks who have lost sight have a different way of, processing the world. They hear it at a different level.
Yeah.
So we all often overcome. And so we all believe that everybody has some sort of superhero tendencies, but those with a, medically complex or special needs issue generally will gravitate towards that area that they've got the ability to express. So I'm a fan. I think it's amazing. Walt Disney's on that list, by the way.
Yes.
Creative people who have dyslexia. You're in good company. You're in good company. It really is awesome. And so are you guys, so you've gone to the local school. Are you doing other, what other kind of outreach are you doing to get people, in aware of the book, what you're all doing, the series, the Creative Cap Company? What other things are you doing?
Well, we have been invited to speak on some wonderful podcasts and programs like yours, and we really appreciate it. We've gone to other schools. We have tried to get the books into some of the libraries. We've gone to some fairs. We word of mouth. We have, I think, an interesting social media platform that we've been working on, and the website. So we're trying to get the word out and our book out, and we love when people contact us through the website or, social media. And there's really interesting conversations that we've had with people.
Beautiful.
So it's opened wonderful doors. Yeah.
That's great. Is just to be clear, obviously we've got our favorite, the ADHD car. Is Robbie the taxi going to go do other adventures, or have we completed that story? Yeah, I'm assuming that, right? Because this was the airport adventure,
Yeah.
number one, right?
Well,
This is not the last you'll see.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Johnny.
I was just going to say, this is not the last time you'll see Robbie the Dyslexic Taxi.
I love it.
Right.
I love
Do
it.
you guys have any kind of ETA for the next book, or is it too close to the infancy?
Oh, now we sound like publishers, by the way. Now we're going to put the pressure on. What's next?
We would love to talk to anybody. That would be great. But we're, John, we're in the middle of it. And we've pretty much finished the story. And John is really working hard at getting the art done. So we're hoping the fall.
Beautiful.
Wow. That's great. What I want to thank you for and have an appreciation for is when Brian asked how all of this started, and John began by saying, well, it started with the pandemic. We lead these crazy lives, and Brian and I have thought about ideas that we have together and individually with regard to publishing a book. And, there's something to be said for taking an idea from the mind to paper and then to reality. And so the pandemic, first of all, it's kind of mind-blowing to think that was 4 years ago, but you got it done. So to anybody that's, again, we're all about making the world a better place and trying to maximize the lives that we live. You've got me thinking about, the ideas that I'm sitting on, no matter how simple or great they might be. There's something to be said for getting the best out of you. They say that, cemeteries have the greatest songs, movies, ideas, and everything, because most people die with their music or their song still within them. So kudos to you for doing everything you can to get yours out. I'm inspired by it, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Yeah, no, that's really nice.
That's awesome. We put up on the screen for people you just mentioned your social media. So on Twitter or X, I wish they'd figure it out. But you
we haven't done quite as much on Twitter. We mostly that's never mind.
That's a different conversation. Yeah,
different conversation. But we're definitely on Instagram and Facebook and our website, and we actually recently started something on Substack, and we've been writing on that platform as well.
Beautiful.
And that's called Creative Wayfinders, because it's a creative journey through all of this, and we've been discussing a lot of different topics, but mostly in the neurodivergent community.
Amazing. By the way, I love the name Creative Wayfinders.
John came up with that. I loved it.
Brilliant. Isn't that what aren't we all trying to find our way?
Yes.
Most definitely.
Even those of us with adult children, and we're still trying to find our way.
Every day is a new adventure.
Then I was going to ask you, and then John, I would love to hear your answer to this too, but tell me about your older children and their support of John and this endeavor, and kind of throughout how because I have found, and I'll answer for myself first, but I want to hear from you. My other children, I find, are more sympathetic, just in general. They're more empathetic people in general because of seeing what my oldest
talked about that. Yeah, you don't love your child with a disability or a diagnosis more, but it's a different type of love, a different type of attention that affects different other siblings in a variety of ways. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Just curious how your other children.
So the other children are much older than John. They're 12, 10, and 8 years older. And I think at the beginning, they were obviously very supportive, but because, they were, as they got older, they were like in middle school and high school. And I think, that's definitely a time of, of being self-centered a little bit, in any normal kid. And so I don't think I don't think they were supportive. They understood if I wasn't home at a particular time, they understood that John was going through things. But interestingly, I think as they've gotten older, and some of them have children now, I think that has been like a more of an aha moment. And, now that John is an adult, not just the baby brother, I think, and John certainly can speak to it, but I think there's a different way of everybody looking at each other. I definitely see my daughter, who has two children, very much of a more understanding, like, oh, because she has kids now, she gets it.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so, I think as they've gotten older, there's been a more increased and empathetic kind of relationship.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think, we all learn once we are in, once we are in those footsteps, what that's like. And John, how was that for you, having older siblings who were kind of in their own thing, doing their own, I've got a 17-year-old. I get it. It's like he's in his own space. So
it was weird because I knew they supported me, but also I knew, like, as soon as I was getting to an age where I started to realize that a lot of them were headed off to college and going on their own adventures. And so while I never thought for a second they weren't there for me, it was a different sort of experience because they already knew for the most part what they were doing or where the next step was. And I didn't know what the next thing was until I went to Inward. So they gave me support, but I always felt like I couldn't really give back in a way. So it was an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Wow.
I will say, if I could add a PS, that our oldest grandchildren, my grandson is 8 and my granddaughter is 5. The other one's a newborn. My grandson loves doing all the things that John does. He loves doing Legos. He wants to take art classes. There's definitely some hero worship, and it's very sweet to see. So there was that age gap, but now John is a younger uncle, and it's really a lovely relationship to watch them with his nieces and with his nephews and niece. So
love that.
Wow. That is everything. That is what everything is about. Time with and the development and growth that you have with the people that you love. It's just everything.
Yeah,
it is.
Agreed.
Agreed.
It really is.
Yeah, it is.
We have a question we're going to ask you in a minute, but before we get to that question, which we ask every guest, any other things that you want to share? Is there anything that we didn't cover? I'm fascinated by the story. I love the journey that you all are on, and I'm rooting for your great success. But anything that we didn't cover that people should know about you guys? No.
No, I think I just would say to parents, just listen and go with your gut. And if you're curious or concerned or questioning, do some exploration. Now there's so much out there that I didn't have. You can go to the internet, Facebook groups, different social platforms. You can Google any questions. And I think the world is out there to explore. And if you have questions, um, you know, don't sit down and just throw up your hands and say, well, I don't know. Really go explore. There are other people. I guarantee there are other people in your shoes who are willing and able to talk to you about whatever your questions or concerns are.
Beautiful. I'm a fan. My daughter was diagnosed. Now it's 27 years ago. We didn't have we had the internet. We used to, log on to Prodigy. We didn't. There was
and dial up only, right?
I was going to say 20 minutes later, maybe you'd get a connection.
Yeah, it was. And by the way, again, a roadblock that we just pounded through because we wanted answers. So
yeah,
I wanted to add to that too. Hearing what Beth's saying, we always say that we're hosts, but we're members of the audience as well. So as you were telling parents what to do in terms of asking questions, someone listening may think that is a message for a parent with a child that's recently diagnosed, or newborn, excuse me. You know, my son is 18, diagnosed with autism at 3. I'm taking that in and thinking about the way I interact with him now. So if your child is anywhere from a minute to 30 or beyond, everything that you've just said applies. That's number one. Number two, the other thing I was going to say, in terms of togetherness and making sure that people are reminded that they are not alone, we want to encourage people to, utilize us in this platform as a resource. That's what this is here for. So we can be emailed at wearejustudads@gmail.com. The 2 is spelled out TWO. And then they can also go to our website and subscribe there to the newsletter, where we're continuing to bring people together. Everybody has something to say. Everybody has something to offer and something to learn. The most basic human need is knowing that we're not alone and that we're seen and heard, which we talk about all the time. But this is the portion of the show where we ask the following question. Our effort here is to try and make this world that we live in, the room, so to speak, a better place than we found it. With that in mind, if you can each give us an example, whoever wants to go first, of a thought or a belief that you once believed strongly, but now no longer believe to be true.
You want to go first, John?
Sure. Well, I used to, when I was younger, think that I was less than what I actually was, because I wouldn't say put down, but I was put in a category that it hurt. I'm not going to lie. And so because of that, I felt like I was just right off the bat not going to be able to accomplish anything of note in life. And now I realize that having dyslexia, while it was something that at first I was both confused and angry about having, I would never get rid of having had it, because it helped get me to where I am today. And without it, I wouldn't have tried art. I wouldn't have created this book. I wouldn't have tried getting an MFA. None of that would have happened. And I wouldn't have met the amazing people that I have along the way because of that. So I guess my main thing is that, in fact, having dyslexia or any other form of learning difference, or any other neurological difference, is a superpower. It's not a curse. And that's something I want to impart on those younger than me.
Love that. Love that. Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Great.
How about you, Lynn?
Similarly, I think when John was little and I didn't know really anything about dyslexia, I was so afraid that he was not going to be able to be educated, and that he wouldn't learn to read. And how do you grow up in this world and not learn how to read? And then I quickly learned that I was really wrong, that not only is it his superpower, but people with neurodivergent issues are there's so many different kinds and so many different people. And I have learned so much from this community. I've learned about, and I think it's extended not just to the neurodivergent community, but just in general, it's made me broaden my perspective on humanity. And so if you're given something, I think things that we are given that are difficult, I think we learn the most from. And I would say, if you are given a diagnosis or a family member and it's a difficult one, take a deep breath and learn from it, because I certainly have. It's given me so much to learn and understand. And, I have an amazing son who's amazingly creative, and we wrote this book. And so I appreciate that I was given the chance to learn about all of it.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the difference between something happening to you and versus for you. And we get to decide which one it is, not the circumstance. Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you both for being here and sharing your story with us. We're fascinated by it. For anybody listening, again, go to creativecabcompany.com and see more about John and Lynn's story, and buy a copy of the book, and share with as many people as you possibly can, and be on the lookout for more. And really glad to have you both here. And and John, I will tell you, my mom was, it was everything, and in every aspect of my life. And I lost my mom a year ago, and I'm so grateful for. Thank you. So grateful for the experience. So as challenging as it can be at times, enjoy that. It's a beautiful thing, and beautiful to watch. Yeah, love that for you too. So as we wrap up the show, I'm just going to sign off by saying my part of our sign off is I always tell people, and this is a perfect example, empathy and love. If you're in a situation, you don't understand somebody's situation, have some empathy. You never know what they're going through, what they're dealing with, what their challenges are. So have some empathy. And if you look at the world through lenses of love, it's just a much more beautiful place. So thank you both again for being here. I'm going to throw it to Sean to sign us off, and we're going to thank everybody, but Sean, go ahead and sign us off and thank all of our folks.
Most definitely. I'm just so thankful for the opportunity and the platform. And for those listening live, this is going to be our last show for about a month. We'll be back in September with, when we started this thing, we just kind of got started and stuck to it, and we remained disciplined, and we put out, new content on a weekly basis. And we realized, wait a minute, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants. We're going to come into the 200th episode. This fall, we're at close to 180 right now. We're going to sit back, take a month off, enjoy the time that we have with the people we love, and regain and refocus and begin anew in September. And I think it's a great way to close out the season, so to speak, with these fantastic people in both, Lynn and John. And trust me, we're going to work together again, and we will have you back on the show as well. Because Sean, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you think back, like you guys, like this is really kind of monumental for us as well, right? This is episode 179. Our first episode 4 years ago, we were doing things like, is the camera on? Can you hear me? And today we're celebrating you and your book. So
Thank you. We're happy to celebrate you too. We didn't realize that's such an amazing statistic. Amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we take it for granted. So in closing, I also want to remind you again to, and notice the milestone. Celebrate all victories, big and small. I'm revisiting the trip that I took yesterday with, my son and my brother, my mom, and my niece, and I'm realizing some of the breakthroughs that were there. Stop for a second, get off the road of life, stand on the side of the road, and take in any and everything that you can around you. Sometimes we're so busy, again, doing that we forget to spend as much time being. And remember, again, that questions are more powerful than words. It's easy for us to judge. It takes work to try and keep our consciousness up. Be more childlike and less childish, so that we give each other a lot more love and much less judgment, especially right now, especially in this country of ours, and especially between now and November. We're really going to need it, and we need each other. Everybody needs the same thing: wants to be seen, wants to be heard, wants to know that they matter, and want to be loved. I don't care what your religion, race, gender, sexual orientation, or anything else is. We need each other. So with that said, to everyone within the sound of my voice, first I want to thank Billy Footwear again, our sponsor. If you click on the link that's shown on the screen, you get 10% off. They make adaptive footwear for all people. The story of Billy Price, the founder of the shoe and the company, is another example of someone who has turned, what could be a tragedy into an adventure, a challenge into an opportunity, and found a way to serve others with it. So to each and every one, thank you so very much. We will see you next month. And if you're watching this, if you're hearing this, we love you.
Thanks again, Lynn and John. Don't go anywhere. We sign off. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in a month.